Thrilled to be with you. I have enjoyed being in your county this past day. I got here last night about midnight, especially the two main communities that I got to go visit. The first one was okay. How many of you say Lancaster? It is Lancaster. Oh, we got the definitive there. You know, there is a place in South Carolina. It's called Lancaster, South Carolina. But enjoyed being there. Enjoyed learning about the history of Lancaster. You used to have, in fact, you were the first place in the state that had night horse racing. Does that not seem weird to anybody? I mean, is that like the old equivalent of drag racing at night? You know, let's get the horses out of the barn. Let's go down the dirt road and let's race them. You know, and of course it wasn't dark though because you had natural gas. You know, natural gas in the area, and they lit up the runway or they lit up the raceways with burning flames. I mean, if you're a horse, you're going what? So, but you know. Pickerington, okay. Anybody here from Pickerington? Oh, yeah, there's my Pickerington folks. You've got an interesting history too. And in fact, I didn't know if I would be welcome in Pickerington today, okay? Because you haven't always liked Carolina people. Anybody know their history? What did Pickerington used to be called? Jacksonville, named for Andrew Jackson. Fact check me on the history if you would like. I think it was around 1950. Don't y'all go to school? Around 1915, you changed it from Jacksonville to Pickerington because of an outstanding citizen named Abraham Pinkerton, I think. Is that right? Pinkerton. Yeah, I got that right. It's been great to be here. Now, what is tonight about? Because you're going... Wait a minute, Jones. We just came from an awards ceremony, and now we got you. I'm confused. The ADAMH team had great forethought in this idea that we're celebrating the accomplishments in the community in the past year. And normally we end it there. And many of you would go home, and you'd go home, yeah, that was a nice evening. Lovely meal. Good to see all those folks. They said, what if we added a dimension that challenged people to say, what are you going to do in the next year to grow the community and to raise hope? And so they invited me to be a part of things tonight, and I'm honored for that. And so as we get started tonight, a couple of ground rules for our time together. First of all, I know that's been a long day for some of you, and you really break out into three different mindsets during a presentation like this in the evening, okay? There are three groups in this room right now, and I have to cater to all three of you if things are going to go well. The first group are the ones who go, oh, yeah, wow, he's going to talk about growing a healthier community. I see he's written a couple books. I'm excited about learning tonight. So my first group, you are the learners. Now, based on the time of day, that's about two of you in the room, okay? All right? About two of you who are learners. The rest of you fall into one of the other two groups. One of those is that you're sitting there right now going, can I just go home? Jones, I've had a long day. And what would really help me grow my community is if I could go home and rest. Because I'd be a much nicer person at work tomorrow, you know. You're not a learner. You are what I call a prisoner. You know, and you're not excited about being here. So prisoners, here's what I got for you. I set my watch when we started. I have 40 minutes left. Okay, so you can count it down. Synchronize your watches. 40 minutes, I will be done. Now, if you're not a learner, you're not a prisoner, you fall into my favorite category of people to work with during an evening presentation. And you're the ones who are sitting there going, oh, I got more work to do when I go home. You know, I got to put kids to bed, or, I got to think about tomorrow. No, I'm just kind of fine hanging out here. I mean, it's a beautiful facility, hanging around good people. You're not a learner. You're not a prisoner. What you are, my friends, is a vacationer, okay? You're just glad not to be at home right now. So vacationers, I'm sorry, I only got 40 minutes for you tonight as we get started. Now, seriously, what we are going to be working through tonight is a model of this idea of how do we grow better communities. And what I want to key in on are a couple words there is grow and community. And when I say community, we think of the county. We think of your townships like Sugar Grove. Anybody here from Sugar Grove? See, you didn't think I knew about that. Sugar Grove, named for the sugar maples where the town was built originally. And so that's a community. But community is also your family. Community is also your workplace. And so when we talk about this whole idea of growing community, growing a better community, I want you to kind of hone in on what does that mean for you? And the second part of that is the grow part. And as I think about that, especially as it relates to this idea of mental health and wellness and substance treatment and those kinds of things, I think of a quote that I heard several years ago. Let me tell you something. My background is a horticulture teacher. In fact, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to move. Now I can do it. I'm going to move down here because I feel like I'm too far away from y'all. Okay, mark it. First y'all came in 7 minutes into the presentation. My background is horticulture. I used to be a horticulture teacher. So I taught people how to have beautiful landscapes. I taught them about what the weeds were in their yard and taught people to manage golf courses and that kind of stuff. And that was my background. And so I've always wanted to teach from my technical background, if you will. And a few years ago, I heard someone make this comment in a presentation. He was a change management guru, and he said, when it comes to leading change, we keep bringing in mechanics when what we need are gardeners. Of course, with my background, I went, be still my good heart. That's so special. And I thought about, what does that mean? And I especially think about that tonight in terms of community. Can we just be honest with each other for a moment, and that when it comes to this whole idea of mental health and substance abuse and those kinds of things, and treatment and growth and recovery, so many people in our communities, don't they look at it like mechanics? It's a problem to be fixed. And in fact, if you think about it for a moment and think more about a mechanic's mindset, that's what mechanics do. They fix problems. And mechanics are reactive, right? I mean, how many of you here went to visit your auto mechanic in the past 30 days just to say hello? Well, you might be married to one or have a relative. Yeah, sure. But we don't. We only go to a mechanic when something is wrong. And I feel like sometimes when it comes to this whole idea of building better communities, we keep looking at the problems. Oh, we got to fix this problem. We got to fix that problem. And that's important. But that doesn't grow anything. It just kind of keeps things running smoothly, which is important. But is it really getting you where you want to go? Now, on the other hand, if you approach leading change, making better communities by looking at it like a gardener, what does that mean? What does that look like? In fact, this is the part where I start throwing it out to you. I meant to tell you in the beginning, anytime I talk to a group of people, it is not a lecture. Okay? Because I have a philosophy about a lecture, and it's this. When I die, may it be during a lecture. Because then the transition from life to death is so minimal. Okay, all right. So here's what I want to do. Let me start up this way. I would love for somebody to tell me, if you approach change and building a better community with a gardener's mindset, what does that even mean? How is being a gardener different than a mechanic? Somebody just call it out. Yes. You got to nurture. Yeah. Okay. All right. Somebody else? You got to start early. Yeah, you can't plant something today and say, grow, and then it comes up tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. You got to plan ahead. All right. Somebody else? Patience. Yeah, you got to have patience in that. Anybody else? You got to fertilize it, water it. Yeah, there's all this work that's involved, and you don't even know the results yet, right? A gardener might think they know, but they haven't seen things start growing yet, and they have to have faith that things are going to work out. So what I want to offer you tonight is, what does it look like to grow a better community using the mindset of a gardener? Now, this is a simple mindset. This is for the 2 learners in the room. The simple mindset, you only got to remember 4 words, okay? I mean, it's so simple, even someone from Kentucky. I'm sorry, North Carolina. I wasn't using North Carolina. That somebody from North Carolina could understand. All right, the first word in this model is grow, okay? Now, let me show you what I mean by that. I need a volunteer. I need someone who likes to grow stuff. Legal or illegal, does not matter, you know. I'm sorry, we are recording, so be careful what you say tonight. But no, your name is Allie. All right, Allie, you're a vegetable gardener? No, flowers. Okay. Well, let's just test you for a moment. Allie, right? No, your name again? I thought it was okay. This time of night, I kind of drift off a little bit too. Okay. Allie. All right. So Allie, have you ever grown tomatoes? Okay. Your husband, well, of course then, all right? So let me ask you, Allie, what does it take to grow good tomatoes? What do you think? Good soil. Patience and water. Okay, what else? Sunlight. Support. Okay, got to have support. Okay, that's good. You're still missing one. Got to have seeds, of course. Yes, your name's not Allie, but that's okay. I'm just kidding. All right. Anything else? Sunlight. Okay. All right. You're struggling, Allie, but thank you. You got us started. See me after it's over. I'll get you a copy of one of my books. All right. Somebody else just called out. What did she miss? Patience. Yes, she said patience. Weren't you listening? Soil was said. Weren't you listening? Is nobody listening? Goodness. All right. So, well, somebody said water. You're still missing what? Well, of course, you got to have a gardener, okay? Immaculate germination. What are we talking about here? So all those things you're still, okay, hang on. I think there are 4 key things, and Allie got 3 of them. But the one she missed is the one that I think so often we fail to focus on anytime we want to grow something healthier or to make it better. All right, so let's review real quick, class. The first one she got was soil. And yes, soil is important because it supports the plant. It's the environment where the roots can anchor. Think about environment for a moment. When you talk about some of the topics in your community, in your part of the world, if you will, what's the environment you create? Is it an environment of possibilities or an environment of problems? The second thing she mentioned was this whole idea not just of soil, but of sunlight. Now, we know sunlight, if you were awake that day in biology class, sunlight drives photosynthesis, right? It makes the plant want to divide. It makes the cells want to divide. It makes the plant want to grow. Think about what's driving your choices each day as you think about making your community a better place. Are you being driven by choices that say, yes, I want something better, so I'm willing to be uncomfortable or have difficult conversations? Or, I'm kind of focusing on the status quo, and that's kind of what's driving my choices. Allie also mentioned the third one. She said, it takes fertilizer and water. Yeah, it takes resources. And we saw tonight, tonight's celebration was a success of the resources that have been utilized in such an effective way in this county to help in some extremely important areas. Now, the one Allie missed, okay, all right. Allie, I'm going to come back to you one more time. She's like, I'm going to the bathroom and I ain't coming back. All right, Allie, your husband, you said plants, he does tomato plants, right? Do you know what time of year he puts them out? April? Okay. Well, I got a question for you, Allie. Why don't you think he puts them out in January? No, wait. Hear me out. You got great soil. You got sunlight. You got water. You can put fertilizer out there. What's missing, Allie? The warmth, the temperature. In other words, you can have resources. You can have sunlight. You can have great soil. But unless something motivates you, unless something will raise your temperature to do something better, then you're going to keep doing the same thing. Now, motivation is a fickle thing, and we could spend the rest of the evening talking about that, but I'd rather you folks talk. So here's what's going to happen. In just a moment, I am going to ask you to turn to the person around you. So if you don't like who you're sitting next to, don't make eye contact, okay? But I'm going to ask you to turn to the person around you, and I'm going to ask you to, it's going to sound weird, but stay with me. I'm going to ask you to describe your favorite vacation spot, okay? Now, maybe it's a place you like to go once a month. Maybe you like to go once a year. Maybe you like to go multiple times a week. It doesn't matter to me, but what's that place you like to go to get away from it all? Now, here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to look at that person and go, I like to go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's a nice place. Now, I use that example because I think half the state of Ohio goes to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Anytime I come to Ohio and I say I'm from North Carolina, I'm like, I know. You've been to the Outer Banks. How'd you know? I'm like, it just is, okay? That's the way it is. But I don't want you to tell that person by just saying, yeah, I like to go so-and-so, it's a nice. That doesn't tell them anything. That doesn't get them excited. I want you to describe your vacation spot in such a way that when you are done, they're like, oh yeah, we gotta go there. So tell them what you'd be doing when you're in that vacation spot, as long as it's not immoral, unethical, or illegal, Tell them who'd be with you. Tell them what they would be experiencing when they're in this vacation spot, because you want them to say, I want to go to that vacation spot, okay? You got 90 seconds between the two of you. Oh, I'm sorry, the most important thing. You'll know your time is up when you hear the train whistle, okay? So when you hear, okay, that's just your cue to be finishing up your conversations, all right? 90 seconds between the two of you, go. Okay, I want to hear from somebody who, when your person described their vacation spot, you went, oh yeah. Who had that experience where somebody did a really good job? I shouldn't have used really, because now you feel like the bar's too high. But somebody tell me, who's got an example? Oh, very good. Okay, sir, your name is
Dan.
All right, Dan. Dan, who did you talk to?
I talked to the good doctor, Justine.
Okay, good Dr. Justine. Wow, that sounds like a great talk show. Very good. Okay, so go ahead. Where does she like to go?
They like to go to new places. They have a 4-month-old, 5-month? 4-month-old baby boy, so they are experienced life that way, but going to a new place, new adventure all the time. So trying to cover all the 50 states or somewhere that's a different adventure.
Okay, so they like to go on adventures.
Yes.
Was she specific about where these adventures might be?
They just said
Incredibly big.
Okay, good. Okay.
vague.
Yeah, blew my example completely. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, like to go on adventure, like to go in different places. And so here's what I know happened in general, okay, in your conversations, is that you started talking about the experience. Some of you started talking about what you would see in that vacation spot, right? Like, oh, I see clear mountains, or I see water. For some of you, you talked about what you would be hearing. Silence. Some of you talked about the smells of the fresh air, or a certain food that you like to enjoy in that vacation spot. Some of you talked about the food you'd be tasting, and sometimes you talked about things you'd be touching, toes in the sand, or a golf club, or the hand of the 4-month-old, as we're experiencing these things together. My point is this: the only way you raise your temperature, your excitement, your motivation to take the next step for a healthier community is if you create a sensible vision of it. Now, sensible vision means that it makes sense to you. And that term comes from someone who I learned this from years ago, a guy by the name of Dr. Spencer Johnson. He wrote a little book called Who Moved My Cheese? Some of you are nodding your head. And he talked about, if you want to get people excited, Jones, about changing, you got to give them a sensible vision. And so I took it to the next level. Said, well, most of us have 5 senses. A few have 6, but most of us have 5. So, what are you going to see, hear, smell, touch, or taste? Now, we don't have time to do it tonight, but the next time you're talking with the people around you about your community, I wish we had a better community, or I wish our community was healthier. Ask them this question: what would we physically see, if our community was healthier? What would we hear? What would we be tasting? A celebration meal like tonight? What would we be touching? And what would we be smelling? Smell is the strongest emotional connection that any of us have to a place or to an event. If you don't believe me, your grandmother's house, fresh cut grass, a high school gymnasium. I didn't say they were all positive smells, okay? I'm just kind of making the point here. But you see what I'm saying? Is that we got to make it sensible. So when we say healthier, what does healthier look like? I think that's what you've got to go after and begin to figure out. If you don't believe me about the words of Aristotle said the soul never thinks without a picture. Wow. if you want to dig down deep into people's thinking, come up with a picture. So the first word is grow. Second word is cultivate, okay? I love that word because of what the definition, one of my favorite definitions of it in the dictionary, which is to improve by study, labor, or care. Think about that. By study, labor, or care. To improve by study, labor, or care. Creating a healthier community starts with not only just creating the environment where good things can happen, but it's creating systems and processes and things that help to make the community healthier. Now, I wrap it up in something called the 3 Ps, okay, because it's easy for me to remember. And I don't mean snow, sugar, and snap. Most of you are horticulturally challenged, I can tell. But it's first of all, it's priorities. It's priorities. You know, a gardener walks into a garden and they go to see what needs help. They don't just say, okay, I'm just going to just spend a little time with every plant. They pay attention to certain plants and they look, which plants are struggling? Which plants need my attention? Which plants need resources? Which plants are thriving? They start asking questions in that way. So priorities. The second one's processes. Systems and processes. We heard about some of those tonight in the awards program about different things that are going on. You saw those amazing slides of all the different things that happen. And I know even those of you, even you though you live here, you're probably going, I didn't know that was going on. But there's a system, there's a process. And before we get to the third P, I want to stop right here and say, it's easy so often for us to say, this is what we need to do as a community. My question is, what are you doing for your own mental health and wellness? One of the things that I've learned in the past couple years in the journey with my daughter and several others is that I had to get smart about my own mental health and wellness. Because I certainly can't be of service to others if I'm not taking care of myself. So I'm going to challenge you for a moment, and I do want you to talk to the other person around you about it. And here's a question I want you to go after. What's a process that you have in your life to maintain your own mental health or to improve your mental wellness? What's something you do that helps you to be at your best so that you can be available for others in your community, whether that community is your home, your workplace, or the county? What do you do to maintain your own mental wellness? 90 seconds between the two of you. Go. All right, thank you for your discussions. Brave soul who'd be willing to say to the rest of us, Jones, this is what I do. This is what I do to support my own mental health and wellness. Who's got an example for us? Oh, let me just run back here. I'll get my 10,000 steps in, I'm sure. All right, go ahead. What do you do?
We spend the evening just watching TV after the kids go to bed.
Okay.
It's just the two of us relaxing.
Okay. And so, are both of you on your phones the whole evening while you're watching TV?
Depends on the night.
Yeah.
Depends on the night. Depends on what's on TV. It depends on what's streaming that evening. Okay. All right. So thank you. Okay. Somebody else, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Yes?
I won't make you get more steps in. I'm a gardener, so I garden, but my mom also lives next door. So a lot of times I just go sit on the porch and talk to my mom. She's like my best friend and counselor. So
Love that. Love that. All right. Oh, yeah, I'll come all the way over there. Let me see. I got a cookie tonight from this amazing lady that brought that tray of cookies so I can eat the cookie after all this running. So, all right. So here we go. All right, go ahead.
I go to therapy, so I also get mental health services as well. So,
and on that note, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. In fact, a little support here. Can we? Okay. And thank you. And here's the reason I get so excited when I hear people say things like that. I was at a sales conference, probably about a month and a half ago. And I asked the question kind of in a different way. It wasn't really specific on the topic of mental health, but I said, what helps you to stay on top of your game as salespeople? And of course, you know salespeople. If you're a salesperson, you're like, go after it. You know. And so I was asking, what helps you stay on top of things? There's like 200 some people in the room, and they're at round tables. And so as I started kind of walking around and kind of eavesdropping, listening, there was one table near the back that erupted in applause. And they were cheering each other. I'm like, ooh, I got to go find out what's going on with that. And so I walked over when it was time to do the debrief, kind of like we just did. And I said, can y'all tell me what happened here? I said, the other tables were kind of talking, but y'all just erupted in cheering and support. And somebody said, well, I started by saying, what helps me stay at the best of my game is I go to therapy once a month. I said, somebody across the table looked at me and said, you too? I go, every couple weeks. And then somebody else said, you know what? I have found counseling to be very helpful. And then somebody else started mentioning. And so the whole table just went, yeah, we're being honest with each other. We're mentioning the things that we need to be at our best, and they were supported. I love the comment, but I think it was the advisor from the high school who said, we've got to make it okay to say we're not okay. And it starts with each one of us being willing to say that and say things that help people to know it's okay to not be okay and to seek help and so that you can grow yourself in that way. So the second one is processes. Thank you for that. Third one is people. Now you're saying, oh, Jones, I got this one. I'm not so sure. One of the ways that we know that we can connect more with people is if we do a better job of listening to what people are saying and the things that we are hearing them say. But let's face it, we're all so busy, we suck at listening, most of us. And I thought I was good at listening. In fact, I went to a coaching certification course several years ago, and as I got to the room, I was talking to people. I said, okay, well, tell me about the agenda, because they didn't give us one. And she goes, oh, well, this afternoon we're going to do some listening exercises. I said, and what else? She's like, no, this whole afternoon is devoted to improving your listening skills. I'm like, good gracious, get me out of here. I don't need help listening. By the end of the day, I do need help listening. Of course, she said, I could have just asked my wife for 34 years and she could have told me that, But it's so easy to do, to be better listeners and to really focus on that person in front of us. In fact, one of the coaching instructors, the way they showed me how you can be a better listener, from the time I walked in the room, I walked in and I was asking some questions about, kind of the afternoon. And she said, well, Jones, it's good to see you. How's your day been? And I said, great. Her next comment was, what does great look like in your world? And first of all, I looked at her and I went, you're weird. Because people don't talk like that. But then I started telling her, there wasn't a whole lot of traffic on I-85, and I've been trying to get here for 6 months, and this is exciting. Well, then she asked me another question, and I'm like, I'm just telling her my whole world, by the time that we're done, but all because she listened and she asked good questions. What could you do to be a better listener to those around you, especially when somebody says something like, I've had a crappy day? You know what our tendency is to do in that moment? I have too. Then you invalidate what they want to talk about. A better thing is, tell me more about that. What does that look like? What's going on? It's so easy to do, but we're so busy we don't often do it. Which brings me to the ultimate question as we kind of transition into the third word in just a moment, because the prisoners are going, Jones, you only have about 13 minutes. I know, I'm going as fast as I can. Is this whole idea, okay, let's take a poll. How many of you in here think that it helps to talk to your plants? Okay, all right, put your hands down. How many of you think it does not help to talk to your plants? Okay, somebody who says it does help to talk to your plants, raise your hand. I'm going to come back and you're going to tell me why. I've already been to you, so I'm going to somebody else. Yes, we will let Jackie answer this one. All right, Jackie, why does it help to talk to your plant?
Because the carbon dioxide helps them grow.
You couldn't be more wrong. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that to you, Jackie. I apologize. Jackie's the person who invited me here. Now she regrets it. But see, here's the thing. Jackie. There's not enough carbon in your body or carbon dioxide to help that plant. I mean, you would have, never mind. I mean, it's messy, okay? The reason it helps to talk to your plants is because you're paying attention to them. Oh, you need water. Oh, the leaves aren't as green as they normally are. I guess you need more sunlight. Oh, you're dead, you know? That's the value in talking to your plants, is that you notice things about them. What's that? I've heard that before, that some about the harmonic or the vibrations and all that kind of stuff. We need a master gardener in here to explain all that to us, but in the interest of time, we won't ask them. But it's so easy to do. What's that? Yeah, exactly. Renata, right? Renata says, yeah, it shows that you care. So easy to do, but we won't take the time. And one of the reasons we won't take the time is because it does take more time. In my longer corporate training programs where I'm going through this model of leadership and leading like a gardener, this is about the time where somebody will raise their hand and say, Jones, like your model, don't have the time. I'm like, great. That brings us to the third word in the model. Prune. Prune. Okay, prune. Where do you need to cut back so you can grow forward? Pruning is all about removing things that are taking energy and resources away from the plant's main purpose. In tomatoes, we call it suckering. For fruit trees, you limb it back so that more of the energy can go to create that apple or whatever the fruit is you're trying to create. Where do you need to cut back so you can grow forward? Now, this is the point in the presentation where many of you are not going to like me, or you're going to like me even less, okay? You're all going to be prisoners in about 3 minutes. If this community is to be healthy, even more so than it is now, it's going to take more commitment from every one of you in here. And as I say that, you're going, you don't know my world. I got a lot going on, Jones. Okay, let's work on that. In fact, let me see if I can help you find a tad more time. A tad more time. You're like, ooh, I bet that stands for something. Because he enunciated tad twice, okay? And it does, by the way. It stands for transfer, automate, or drop. So this is what I want you to think about for a moment. Think about your schedule. Think about all you got going on in your world. Is there anything that you are currently doing, whether it's work-related or maybe it's activities at home, is there anything that you could potentially transfer all or some of it to someone else? You're like, well, that sounds a lot like delegate. Well, it is, but then the acronym would make no sense. Let me help you find a dad more time. So transfer. What is something that you're currently doing that if you could hand that off to someone else, it would open up some space to think about, hey, I haven't heard from so-and-so lately. I should check in on that. Or you know what? I could volunteer or make some phone calls, or I could do something if I had a little more space. So transfer is the first one. A is automate. Research shows that we make about 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000 decisions a day. Every one of those decisions takes a little bit of mental bandwidth. How could you make less decisions by putting something on automate? I'll give you an example. Anybody know the question that we typically ask ourselves every day about 2:30 at work? What's for dinner? Exactly. Yeah, it is. It's what's for dinner. And then I don't care if you are meeting with the CEO of a company, if you're not the CEO, or if you're having this really important strategic conversation, you may be supposed to be dialed into that conversation, but in the back of your mind, you're going, well, let's see, there's that spaghetti that's been back there for about 8 days in the refrigerator. It's probably okay. It occupies your mind needlessly because you're having to make a decision about it. What's something you could put on autopilot? How could you make less decisions so you could mentally think about, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so today, and they just haven't seemed like themselves lately. And so now I can be more present with them. The D is drop, the most obvious one, right? We all know things we could stop doing that would open up some space for us. Now, here's what I want you to do. It's going to be the hardest thing you're going to have to do tonight, except get out of those chairs and walk all the way to the parking lot, because it's a little bit of a distance. And it's this. I want you to tell that person around you something that you could transfer to someone else, okay? Something, or, not and, learners, just or, not and. Or what's something you want to kind of put on autopilot, or how could you make less decisions about something? Or what's something you could stop doing, you could drop, that would open up 30 minutes a week? Now, you can break it down by day if that would be better. You can say 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week. But what we're looking for here is, if we're going to grow healthier communities, we do need you to commit more. But not necessarily a lot more, but how can we help you get that space to do it? So what could you transfer, automate, or drop that'll open up 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week for you? 90 seconds with the person next to you, go. All right. In the interest of time, do I have one person who's a brave soul who will say to the rest of us, yep, this is what, oh, look at you pointing. But not, you don't have to say anything. But
Same outfit for the rest of the week.
That's it. I love that. Yeah. Simplify your wardrobe. That's a less choices to make. Absolutely. Okay. The key is we all have something where we could make less decisions. We could hand off something to someone else, or there's things we could just stop doing. If we simply took away the time we spend on social media each day. Now, I'm not saying you got to take it all away. I'm not trying to do that. But just think about that for a moment. Because here's the thing. I didn't hear anybody say a few moments ago, you know what, Jones, the way that I help maintain a good mental health is by looking at social media. You know? I mean, have any of you, and I know hear you do this, but, you know, I hear of people who start their day by actually looking at their phone and scrolling through social media. And I've often wondered if those individuals, when they finish, if they put their phone down, they go, wow, I am so excited about taking on the day now. Most of us say, no, I'm ready to pull the covers back over my head. We all have something that we could let go of or stop doing. We could prune to create more energy and space to make these healthier communities. The final word is harvest. And to introduce the idea of harvest, I've talked a little about tomatoes earlier. Any tomato gardeners in here? You might grow tomatoes? Very good. Your name is? All right, Laura, you grow them from seeds or plants? Both. Okay, very good. So you start it with seeds and the plants, and you put the plants out probably in April or May. Okay, very good. Okay, so Laura, right? Yeah. Laura, once you put those plants in the ground, okay, and they're now up in the ground, when do you get excited about that tomato plant the next time?
The taller it gets, and then when it starts to fruit.
So you don't just go, okay, tomato plant's doing its thing. I'll wait and come back whenever I'm ready to pick fruit. So there's times along the way that you get excited about what's happening. Okay. Now let's compare that to a mechanic for a moment. When is a mechanic happy and ready to celebrate? When they get paid, yeah. When it's finished, when the car's done, when the big project's over. Gardeners, on the other hand, have a completely different outlook. The master gardeners will back me up on this. If you find a gardener and you start asking, how's your garden doing? Oh, don't do that, by the way. But they will start telling you, oh, yeah, you know, the tomatoes, I've got the first blooms on my tomato. Or you know what, these plants, you know, have new leaves growing on them. Or you know what, we'll have squash next week. Or we'll have, you know, okra. Or we'll have, you know, bok choy or whatever it is that we're growing. They'll tell you about where everything's at in the process and what's grown since last time you talked to them. There we go. Laura's making my point again. She's just excited about the seed germinating from the ground. Here's my point. Tonight was important. No question. Beautiful evening. That's a big harvest. We're going to have to wait till next year to celebrate harvest again? I wonder if during the year there might be some little harvest moments that you might notice in your own family, in your workplace, or in your general community that were a signal to you, hey, you know what? We're growing. We've taken another step. We're getting better. We're addressing things. We're paying attention more. Those little moments mean something. And you know what? That's what keeps people excited. That's what keeps a gardener growing, as Laura said. That's what keeps a gardener growing and going out there every day as they're noticing things are getting better. They're looking for the good, not looking for the problems necessarily like a mechanic might in one sense. Now, the last thing about gardening and thinking about things like a gardener, there's a growing season. I mean, I joked with, is it Allie? That's right, yeah, Allie. Allie's like, no, don't come back. But there's a growing season. If you don't plant something now, you got to wait. And you miss an opportunity. As I thought about that, I was thinking about when I was coming up yesterday, I knew that we would celebrate a lot of things related to families this evening. And of course, my family is very important to me. I was on the phone with my older daughter, Alex, as I was headed to the airport yesterday, and she asked me where I was going. And I thought about a situation with Alex a few years ago that just kind of ties together everything that's happened this evening. When Alex was younger, I took her on a trip with me to Japan, a business trip, because I believe it wasn't Watson, what was it? Justine. Yes, all right, I still got it. Dr. Justine talked about, taking kids on adventures. Well, I want to take my daughter, Alex, on an adventure. And you say, why didn't you take your wife, moron? Well, my wife was 6 months pregnant with our second daughter. You don't go drag a pregnant woman halfway across the world, especially not a few years ago. And so anyway, we're going to Japan, and I'll never forget the last thing my wife said to me before we got on the plane. That's back in the days when you could actually get, really close before they got on the plane. And so she said to me, she took me by the hand, and I just knew she said, I love you, have a great trip. My wife looked at me and she says, hold her hand. I'm like, what? So everywhere you go, you hold her hand. Like, Lisa, I got this. You know I'm a good dad. She goes, no, hold her hand. Promise me. Yes, honey, I promise. We get on the plane. We fly into Tokyo, Japan, and we're touring around a couple days later, having a great time. Just amazing. Explaining the culture to Alex, and she's looking at all this stuff. And we walk down into a train station, and so we're looking around. And Alex loved to read posters and things on the wall, and so we're just enjoying all that. And I noticed the trains beginning to come into the station, and so I'm holding her hand. We're walking around, looking at different things, and I'm kind of edging her a little bit. Come on, Alex, we need to get on the train. The train's getting ready to come to the station. She's like, yeah, Dad, I want to look at this poster. It's really cool. I'm like, okay, but we got to go. We got to get to this next place. So then finally, as we're getting a little bit closer, she says, Dad, I want to look at this. I'm like, honey, we got to get on the train. And so just for a moment, I jumped onto the train and let go of her hand. And she's over here. And don't worry, nobody dies in the story. And so it's one of those moments where you start looking at it and it's just like slow motion, It's like I see her coming toward me going, Dad! And the door's closed. And so I'm standing there, and thank God, somebody on the train saw what was happening, and they hit some kind of emergency button. The doors flew open. Alex jumped onto the train, and I just knew she was going to say thank you. She said, I'm telling Mommy. And she did. And after a few months of counseling, we were fine, okay? We got to the Navy base where I was speaking later that week, and I was telling my point of contact. I was telling her about the experience. She goes, oh, we figured that out a long time ago. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, well, I always told my kids that if we get separated, you get on the next train going in the same direction. It's going one stop, and I'll be waiting on you there. And I said, where were you 3 days ago? Now, my point is this. I almost lost something really precious to me because I had a plan. I think it's the same thing when it comes to mental health, substance abuse, and prevention. You've got a marvelous plan. You've done some amazing things in the past year. And I also know that it's not going to get any easier. What's your plan? What's your plan to grow a better community, a healthier community? Maybe it's time to really embrace the mindset of thinking like a gardener, because best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Next best time is now. Thank you for letting me be with you this evening.